Okay. I haven't prepared anything, so we're going to wing it a little bit. Then if you can bring up number 1 for a minute. My story starts quite recently, actually, but Betsy just reminded me that on the 21st of May in 2010, we got engaged so that we could then be married and become the family we are now with Artie and Lily. And the interesting thing is this date now is even more special because this was the day I got saved this year. So, hopefully we've done stuff in order. So, some of you know I went to Africa. I'm an aircraft engineer. I've been contemplating the whole getting saved story. Being the engineer, I always had a bit of a doubt I always had questions. I always wanted to know more before I would give. For me, that was a struggle. More so probably for Betsy, and Steve, I'm sure, has also had this frustration with me. But I always wanted to know, and I always kept saying that I needed something really obvious and physical to almost convince me. I needed to, I fought too much against it. Every time I was close, I was coming back with a reason to not give myself to the Lord. In fact, just before I went to Africa, I went 3 weeks ago and I got back 2 days ago. Betsy and I had a discussion after leaving church here, I believe it was, saying, what was it going to take? But many people concerned and many people praying for me to get saved before I went to Africa, because I was going to Ghana, Congo, Zimbabwe, South Africa, and some of these places I was going were a little bit rough. So, just a quick glimpse, we're here in Accra in Ghana. Just to give you a bit of a backstory to lead to where we're at. We're about to depart on a journey. This is the beginning of the day, the 21st of May. We've got some Diamond aircraft here. We're going out to do some special work in the Congo. They don't travel very fast, they don't travel very far, which comes into a bit of the story later. And we were leaving Ghana. We were going to Santa May, which is a small island just south of Ghana, sort of Portuguese origin, for a fuel stop, and then we were going to Kinshasa, which is the capital of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Number 2, please. So here I am, living the dream, sitting in the seat here, doing some navigation and stuff. The screen here, we call it an FMS. It's got information, flight plans, weather, communications and such like. And where we are in Africa here is very tropical. It's the end of the rain season. It's very hot, very humid, very prone to thunderstorms. Next picture. So, our constant scene was these building up. Now, at the beginning it wasn't too bad because we could dodge storms, it wasn't too bad. But we're sort of travelling away distance. Endurance on the aircraft isn't great. So we had to be quite careful, quite confined to the routings that we were on. Which meant that if anything was in our way, we started to get into trouble. So you can see them building, so we're sort of being trapped here. Now,
how high are you again?
we're 11,000 feet with a density altitude of 13,800 feet with no oxygen. We had to do this because we had to climb to avoid some weather, but obviously the tropical storms in Africa are somewhat different to here. Very high, can't avoid, sort of just have to bite the bullet, I'm afraid. Next one. Our concern was coming up that we had a delay in Santa May, which is the island where we filled up the fuel on our way there to Kinshasa. This delay meant that the sunset was coming in quicker, which meant that we were sort of four hours behind here. The problem with this 4 hours behind is that we wanted to get to Kinshasa at sunset. We did not want to fly through the sort of building storms that were coming at night when you cannot see what there is to avoid. So in the daytime, you can see what we call the cells, and you can try and avoid the core of them, which is where there's hail, there's updrafts, downdrafts, there's microbursting, there's lightning. You know, it's not a nice place to fly. It's very turbulent, very prone to dying. So we would try and avoid them, but at night, you know, you've got no references or anything. Then the next one. So here's an interesting bit. This is the storm scope on the FMS I was just talking about. The arc in the middle. So we're here, flying. We're currently over Gabon. The arc here is 100 miles, so you can get an idea of how much you're seeing here. Every one of those little dots is a confirmed cell site that's live, firing electric storms. Now here, we're quite lucky if we have one or two that get near, but you can avoid. Our cell count at the top, in the top one, you can't quite see it, on the right-hand side says 64. And it was actually moving this way. So we started to panic a bit because we are currently over the middle of nowhere in Gabon. With not enough fuel to return by this point. We've passed our critical point, we're on our way to Kinshasa, and we were about to go through the worst storm I've ever seen in my life. Okay, next. When this was occurring, as we were getting closer and closer, it's closing in, it's getting dark. On the equator, obviously, the sun sets very fast, rises very fast. So dark became very dark. And we were panicking, and I was panicking quite a lot because I know what happens to these aircraft when they get hit by lightning, because I had not long worked on one that had. And it isn't great. So on the way through, I actually started praying. I suddenly realised we were out of communications. If anything had happened to us and we'd gone down, it didn't matter even if we survived the getting down to the ground, we were stuck there. There was no help coming, very remote, and it was pretty much, if anything had happened, it would have been game over. And I started to panic because we hadn't even got to the storm, but I was panicking already, just because I knew it was coming. So I was praying, I was genuinely praying, and I prayed more than I had ever prayed before. It meant more at the beginning. So I started asking for signs of protection, and sort of, if there's going to be a time, it needs to be now. You know, I'm far away from family and friends, and there's me and the poor pilot next to me who's about to have a very bad day. So the first sign that occurred was a rainbow, and it wasn't just a rainbow, it was a full 360 rainbow, which was like the sort of, you're about to enter. The other guys called it the gateway to hell, but I saw it as a sign, because ironically the rainbow of course was a sign for it won't flood the world again. And we were about to be flooded, so I saw this as a sort of an initial bubble of protection. Sounds strange, but it meant a lot whilst I was there. So if we go to the next one, that was the view about 10 minutes later. So, when the sun sets and the clouds are around you, that's what we saw for about 2.5 hours, apart from some extreme lightning storms. I don't have the pictures of the lightning because I was too busy, you know, covering myself. But this was the moment of test for myself. I've had this sign, I've never seen a full 360 rainbow before, and actually it was a double 360 rainbow, which for me was quite special. We were about to enter this abyss of cloud and thunder. I knew that there were 64 storm cells, and I was watching the storm scope and I could see they weren't going anywhere, they weren't dissipating. We were heading straight into the jaws of the monster in this case. I was constantly praying. I really was saying, because the turbulence and everything that we were going through here was horrendous. There was stuff going everywhere. The wings of the aircraft were flapping, quite literally. Diamonds They don't have metal skins, they don't have metal spars to keep the wings on, it's all composite, and they're held in by 4 pins. That's it, 4 pins. I just had issues that if they break, it's all over. Engineering side of me, I see this more. Luckily the pilots were a bit more ignorant to this, and they thought that magic kept them up or something. But I knew the truth, and I knew also that it was very real, that there could be severe consequence. So 2.5 hours of this, and I'm literally praying every 2 minutes, saying that I really need to get home. I need to be protected here. I need every help that I can get that is somewhat spiritual, at least, to get me home so I can see my wife and my children just one more time. Just one more time, is enough. I'm going to try not to cry. Okay, next one. When the time was coming, we're in these storms. We really needed. You saw the black. It's black. And believe it or not, the only pocket of window was above our airfield. So the first thing we saw off the ground of any sign that wasn't thunder and crazy violent shaking of thing was Kinshasa and its airport. And we thought, crikey. And even the pilot next to me said, this is a miracle. And I thought, do you know what? I think you're right. So this is a crazy ordeal. Anyway, so I was quite impressed, and luckily I started filming sort of on a time-lapse video, just to show us coming in, to sort of say that we've got back, you know, so let's see, or whatever. Next one. Yeah, so this was, I'm still looking for signs, I'm still looking for what was going on. So you see it's dark, it's pretty painful, and I was looking for a sign to say that I had actually been protected, and it wasn't just luck. I was looking for something that was genuine, that would make me give myself completely to the Lord to be saved. And that's the only thing you could see from the sky, as you saw. When, you can play it, when we were on the ground, I asked, why do you have a cross at the end of your runway for the approach? Normally you have arrows, guiding lights, and they all said, what cross? That we don't have a cross at the end of the runway. And I even showed some guys this video, and they didn't believe it, because this Marker beacon here at night doesn't work. So, that was enough for me to completely give myself over at that point. And I've only cried whilst telling this testimony. It's like, I don't cry. It means that much, you know. So, we were down and we were fine. And then I really started thinking, you know, my life has changed here. I've had a chance. I've had a new lapse of what life is about. And given that extra moment. The next day, we were flying across the Congo. It was just even more remote. The weather was slightly nicer initially. I had a different mindset by this point. I feel different. I feel protected. I feel that I've got a different way of looking at life now. And as we went forward to the next one, it's a shame I didn't have the before and after, but I've got a bit of a video. So this here is, believe it or not, thunderstorms. It's sort of nothing and more thunderstorms. We can't go under, over, around. It was quite literally like a horizon to horizon thing. And I prayed saying, you've done this for me once, and you've protected me. Please don't let it have been for the day. You know, I mean, like, our deal was, I was going to give myself to you so I could get home. So don't let me down now, this is my moment. And unbelievably, this part moved. So we were aiming for the gap. There wasn't a gap 10 minutes before this. It quite literally led us through after we were like, you know. This journey is 7 hours long in a Diamond. Endurance in a Diamond's 7.5 hours fuel endurance, as long as you don't have headwinds, etc., to slow you down. We had a 12-knot headwind for 7 hours, so about 85 miles before we arrived, we actually should have run out of fuel. So we couldn't avoid, we had to go straight and direct. And I needed to really trust in the fact that we were going to make this, and that this is it. So the clouds quite literally parted, and you'll see, I think, I've got some other pictures on my phone, I'll show you later if I happen up here. It literally made a wall of cloud that we could go past. You can show the next video, it's just a bit of a video, just panning around. So it's quite, they're not small, it's hard to pick the size. But we needed every help we could get, because we were doing fuel calculations all the way there, we realised that we were struggling. But that was a small miracle or so. Okay, next one.
That's the last one.
Is that the last one? Oh, excellent. Okay, then I'll just talk. When we flew through here and we got to Lubumbashi, which is right down in the south of the Congo, our fuel level came on, so we're low level, and that came on when we had crossed over the threshold and we were landing. We thought, crikey, that's good luck. When we were redoing the calculations, they didn't make sense, because in theory, what we should have had with the amount of fuel left and the amount of flying we've done with the crosswinds and the headwinds, was we should have had the best part of 8.5 hours of endurance, which is impossible in this aircraft. Flat out impossible. Doesn't work. So, miracle for me, day one, was surviving the big storm, the sign of the rainbow to say you're protected going into this. Going through it was rough, very rough. And then at the end I needed the sign, and we had the opening, and then I had the cross symbol on the approach, which everyone else seems to not know about. Day two, we had the endurance where we realised that our calculations were not great and we were going to run out of fuel. So we had the cloud parting like the Red Sea or something, and we got there and we were protected all the way there and made it. And from then on, my life was very different, and I had definitely 100% given myself to the Lord at this point. I didn't tell Betsy straight away. I just told her I nearly died. But it was something that I couldn't explain in a text message. It was something, it was too much for that. So luckily when I arrived back from Africa on Friday morning, I saw Betsy and her parents, and I got bombarded that evening to give my emotional testimony for the first time properly to somebody that on Friday. So it was something else, and for me, I suddenly realised that all the questions I had, which I could never answer, never get answers for, everything that was holding me back suddenly didn't matter. That wasn't the point of what was going on. And the point was that once you have that step of faith and believe, and fortunately for me, I had to have it at a rough time, but that was the only time in the Lord's timing that was going to happen, really, is that I needed a bit of a beating to have it done, and I got it. And if anything, I don't know why I hadn't already done it. So, if there is anyone that's not saved here, I have quite a fresh idea of the before and after crossing the door. So, I can give any more information to anyone else. I don't really have much more to say about it. You can show the video again if you want to cross, because it was just the moment that was, I realised that we'd been protected fully. You seem to have fallen over those. The real kicker for that whole thing was the fact that for the first real time in my life, I generally thought I was going to die. And I was angry on myself in that moment because I hadn't got saved before. And there was the closure issue I had actually at that time for Betsy and the children, thinking that I'd gone to Africa and was doing these crazy few weeks with not being saved. I mean, you need to do it before you go, and I was getting quite a beating before I left. And the sort of shame that if I had have gone down there, it wasn't for me. It wasn't really about hell, the lake of fire, and this sort of eternity and torture and torment. It was because I didn't want to let Betsy and the children down, with them not knowing if I had been saved when going down, you know, because you never would have found me, to be fair. And that really started to hit home about really what life is about and how we're here, what the real reason is here, and the everyday stuff that we do with works and dodging clouds and stuff actually is just the fact that's the frilly bits around what really matters. So having the chance to come back was what it took. I realised that actually all I needed was to come back to my family. And if that's what meant giving my life to the Lord for that was what it was. So there we go. That's where we're at. If anyone wants to know any more about going to Africa, it's great. But for me, that's what it was. That was my special thing on that. So yeah, that's all I can think of right now. But I do have more pictures than that if anyone wants to see.